Welcome. Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes for everyone to get here. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome. So we're going to get started in just a few minutes. I see lots and lots of people joining. While we are waiting to get started, in the chat, if you feel so inspired, please post if you are pregnant, how far along are you? Or if you are postpartum, what is the age of your child or children? And also, where are you located? Hi from Montenegro. And I will go first. I am putting it in the chat. I am 29 weeks pregnant and I have a 12-month-old and I'm from Brooklyn. All right, now you guys go. How far along are you? How old are your children? And where are you from? And Sarah and Alex, my lovely panelists, perhaps you can join me as well to inspire the group. Welcome everyone who's just joining. Hi, 28 weeks. We're due very close to each other. Oh, 36 weeks, getting up there, Michelle. Go you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome in. And if you're just joining, we're going to get started in about 90 seconds. As you can see, people are posting in the chat if they're pregnant, how far along they are, if they have children, how old their children are, and where you're calling in from today. Looks like we've got Austin, Texas, San Francisco, Massachusetts, Nashville, LA, Bay Area. Okay, everyone keep putting in the chat your information. How far along are you? How old are your children? Where are you calling in from? But we are gonna get started. So, hi everyone, welcome. On behalf of Vivvi, I'm so excited to welcome you today. I'm Julia Steele, I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at Vivvi. As I mentioned, I have a 1-year-old daughter named Aster. I'm also 7 months pregnant with baby number 2. So if you're pregnant, I'm truly feeling what you're feeling right now. We're thrilled to get started on what I know is going to be a really thoughtful conversation about childcare. So today I am joined by Alex Callie, who's the Manager of Business Development Representatives at Salesforce, and clinical psychologist, Dr. Sarah Bren. Both are moms to young children and know how important childcare is. Not just for your child, but also for yourself. So I can't wait to dig into our conversation. Before we get started, I just wanted to set the stage with a little personal story. So when I had my daughter about a year ago, I was so freaked out about how to hire a nanny. I feel like it's, I had my doula, my birth plan and everything, but the one thing that I hadn't thought about until she was actually out of my body was how I was going to find care for her. I had no idea, like when I did source candidates, what questions I should ask in the interview. I had hired many people in my role as a marketing director, but I didn't know how to formulate a contract for a nanny, what constituted sort of fair pay and benefits. So the learning curve was super, super steep for me. And also the stakes felt so high. I was bringing somebody into our family to watch my daughter for the first time. So luckily we ended up getting a great referral actually from my doula. But the process was so much more challenging than I ever imagined when I was pregnant. So that's why I'm so excited to be leading this conversation today. And at Vivvi, we know that finding childcare can be a huge stressor, just like it was for me. It's one of the reasons we're so excited to be leading these monthly conversations on Childcare 101. Hopefully we can ease some of your own anxiety if you have any around the topic, and help you feel armed with adequate information. So really quickly, if you're not familiar with Vivvi, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we do. We are a childcare and early learning company. So we work with families in a number of different ways. Here in New York, we have 5 beautiful campuses for children starting at 6 weeks old, going up to 5 years. We also have an in-home program that takes the guesswork out of managing and hiring a nanny. Honestly, I wish I would have known about Vivvi in-home a year ago when I just described to you my story. Okay, lastly, I wanted to share a few program logistics, and then we'll dive into meeting our lovely panelists. We have about 45 minutes together today, so I'll use the first 30 minutes to ask our panelists a few questions, and then we'll head over to the chat function and use the rest of the time to answer as many live questions of yours as possible. So if you have a question that you want to ask, feel free to drop it into the chat. I'm going to be taking notes, and we will try our best to get to those at the end. Finally, I wanted to acknowledge this is a huge topic and can be a very emotional one. There's no way that we're going to cover even the tip of the iceberg in 45 minutes on childcare. So our one goal today is that you walk away with at least one applicable, practical tool that will help you feel more equipped to navigate the childcare roads ahead. Now, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves and to share quickly on why this topic hits home for them personally. So Sarah, why don't you go first?
Thank you. So my name is Dr. Sarah Bren. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a mom of two. My son is 5, my daughter's 3. I'm a working mom. I work full time. My kids go to daycare. They have since each of them were 5 months old, with a small hiatus during the beginning of COVID when both my children and me and my husband were all at home trying to do everything. But other than that, they've always been in childcare. I have a clinical practice in Pelham, New York, where I work with parents and families and children and kind of all points on the family timeline. So I work with people planning to build a family, perinatal, mental health, parents of young kids, all the way up through adolescence and young adulthood. And I have resources that I love to teach parents about related to child development, maternal mental health. So I have a podcast called Securely Attached and some parenting courses. And in general, love to do talks like this to give people information, because I feel like going to therapy shouldn't be the only way that people have access to psychologically informed information about child development and parental mental health. So that's what I'm really passionate about.
Wonderful.
Great. I'm
Alex, take it away.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I have an 11-month-old son named Turner, and he goes to Vivvi in Tribeca. We live in New York City. And the reason I decided to do this today is I didn't have a similar situation where I just didn't have any knowledge of what I should be asking and what I expected out of childcare. I always knew I wanted my son to be in a group learning environment, but we initially had a really poor experience with a different daycare. And I think that was because I lacked the understanding of like what good looks like and what I wanted. And so I'm excited to help in any way possible, sharing my experiences.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that. So I'd love to start out our panel by talking first about how you found childcare. So Alex, when did you start looking for childcare and what were some of your considerations? So ultimately, why did you end up choosing to send Turner to Vivvi?
Yeah, so we live on top of a daycare initially. And so I heard everyone say, you can't get your kid into daycare. You need to apply well before they're born. And so at 6 months, I inquired with this initial place and they were able to get him in around when we wanted him to start, which was at 5 months old. And again, didn't ask a ton of questions. We decided that that wasn't the right place for him afterwards. He just didn't seem like he was enjoying it as much. And their hours were, I had to drop them off at 8:30. I had to pick them up at 4:30, which wasn't realistic for my job. And so we found Vivvi based on a referral of friends, and off the get-go, they offered so much insight into what his day-to-day was going to look like. I didn't even care so much about what he was going to be learning, just about the environment that they had there. And I really liked that everything in the school was open concept. So he wasn't just secluded in one room with other babies. He's exposed to all of the different rooms and like the wiggle room, and he's got change of environment. And it's just, he's so happy when he gets there. But ultimately I chose Vivvi because of just the feeling I got from the teachers. And when I reached out to other parents, the passion that they spoke about this school with was the complete opposite experience that I had had in the past. And so that combined with the outlet of communication that they use, like they say minimum 3 pictures a day. We definitely get more than that. And my husband is like constantly in the messages, like commenting on what they're saying, and everyone's writing back, and it goes to all of the teachers in the school. And I just, ultimately it was just like a feeling, but it's also aesthetically very nice inside, which helps.
Sarah, zooming out a little bit, because I know you have the perspective of talking with lots and lots of pregnant people and people who are, parenting young children. What are some of the anxieties that exist around childcare that your patients talk to you about? And how do you advise them to sort of like cut through all of the advice and all the information that we're constantly flooded with to determine what's best for them?
Yeah. And that's such a good question. And I think it varies a lot. One thing that is a constant is most parents feel anxious about it in some degree or another for some reason or other. So I want to normalize it, like the idea of finding the right place or the right person to care for your child, the idea of separating from your child, the idea of them forming attachment relationships with other people. All of these things can feel anxiety provoking. The guilt we feel by going back to work. All of this is stuff that is really normal for parents to struggle with when dealing with, figuring out childcare for your kid. What I will say is oftentimes parents find that as they go through it, they realize it's not as scary as they build it up to be, and that their children are actually incredibly resilient and are quite capable of separating and creating new attachment relationships, and that's actually a really good thing. Some parents, I'll have people be like, well, like they're spending so much time with their teacher or their nanny. They're not, and like they're going to form a stronger attachment with them than with me. Or they're not going to bond with me, or it's going to interrupt our bonding. And so one of the things I often tell parents is I help them understand that, one, it's very helpful and good for child development and the development of secure attachment systems in a child to have multiple secure attachment relationships with a lot of different adults in their lives. Like, we know that if you can only have one, that's, we know that that's resilience, right? Like if you're in a situation where like you can't have any good attachment figures, or there's a lot of not so great stuff happening, that just having just one secure attachment relationship is enough to help a child have emotional well-being in their life. But having many is fantastic. So, and also your child isn't going to have it, them having secure attachment relationships with other caregivers in their world won't supplant yours. Even if you spend less time with your child than all the other people that are taking care of them, you're still their primary attachment figure. And they know that. They know there's a difference between their relationship with you and their relationship with their caregivers. It's this biological hardwiring to attach to you above all else. So I also say that to help parents feel like a little bit less worried about the separations. And I think one other thing that is often a really big concern is like, how will I help my child adapt to this? And like, they don't like to separate from me, or if they separate from me, is that going to be something that they can handle? And I think there are ways to do it gently and with lots of preparation for the child. Even at a very young age, I like to talk about preparation, and it looks different for different age kids, obviously, but you can have an attuned transition into childcare that's going to, meet your child where they're at.
Yeah. Thank you. I personally really needed to hear all that today. I don't know if anybody knows this, but it's Nanny Recognition Week this week. And I was thinking about my nanny and all the ways that she supported our family in the last year. And I was definitely running the numbers in my head, thinking she spends more waking hours with my daughter than I do. And sort of, how does that make me feel? But I love everything you just said, and thank you for that perspective. So Alex, as you know well, being a working parent is all about the juggle. How do you lean on Vivvi or other childcare providers to help you create the space you need to be successful at work specifically?
Yeah, I think a huge component of that is the availability to drop him off whenever it fits my schedule that day. Like right now, my husband's traveling, I'm alone. I have to go into an office in another part of the city. And so I have the flexibility to not only drop him off early, but I can, pack extra food for him and then pick him up later or earlier in the day, whatever fits. And the real thing about that is the open line of communication with his teachers. I get a text message at 7 o'clock every morning from his main teacher asking for what time he woke up, when was his last feeding, anything else that they need to know that day, when they can expect him. And then as things are going on throughout the day, whether he's not liking something I packed for lunch or he does something that they're really excited about, they always make sure that they're sending a video or a picture. And I kind of feel like I'm getting a really big glimpse into his day so that then I can go and focus on my job, which is like how my husband and I have decided that our lives are going to go. I really like working, but I like working more knowing that he's having so much fun. So much so that on like a Friday afternoon, if we're done a bit early, we might go for like a happy hour drink on the way to pick him up from school. And it's just that allows my husband and I to have like this special time where we can go exercise or do something without feeling guilty. Like I need to go pick him up right away because he needs me. When I get there, every time we can walk through the school and go pick him up, and he's always having the best time. And on the way out, he's waving to everybody, everyone's saying, "Bye, Turner, we'll see you tomorrow." And it's just like, I don't feel bad about leaving him because I know exactly what he's up to and he's having a great time. So it makes my life and my work-life balance a lot easier in that respect.
That's great. Turner, local celebrity.
Yeah, he loves it there.
So Sarah, you were touching on secure attachment a little bit before. Deciding between getting a nanny or going into sort of group childcare situations, that can be a biggie for so many parents. And I'm just curious, in terms of attachment, can you share a little bit about what you see as the benefit of each type of care in terms of forming secure bonds? Like what can a parent gain from a one-on-one situation versus group care or vice versa?
Yeah. And I think they're both potentially aligned with following attachment science, right? Like, I think the quality of the care is far more important than whether it's group or one-on-one. I think you as a parent really need to feel safe and comfortable and confident when you leave your child in the care of whether it's one on your nanny or a child care center, in part because your confidence in that transfer is going to impart some communication of safety to your child or not, right? Like if you drop your kid off at daycare and you are like white knuckling it and like ambivalent about like saying goodbye and like checking out everything, your kid's going to feel that nervous energy and it's going to communicate to them, Mom does not really feel cool with this. This must not be so safe. And so being able to feel confident and comfortable in the place that you are leaving your child and being able to like communicate that sort of sense to them is very helpful for their overall level of comfort and how they then can learn or explore their environment or attach to key caregivers in their lives. Because we can't really do any of those things. We can't learn or explore or form new relationships if we are not feeling safe and in that basic way. So that's sort of like a broad idea of like one or the other, but specifically, there's certain pluses and minuses to both. I mean, I think if you have a one-on-one situation, your child is likely to be getting a tremendous amount of individualized attention. That in and of itself can be a plus or a minus, right? Again, like, do you have a provider who's comfortable letting your child explore their environment, or they feeling like they have to entertain them at all times and like, be in their space all the time and schedule every little moment of their day? That's probably going to be a lot for a kid. If they're able to sort of, one of the things I chose group care for my child, for both my kids, in part because I wanted them to have space to explore their environment, to interact with peers, to explore social dynamics, and to just have a little bit more activity in their day-to-day that was like self-directed. And I felt like that for my goals and what I know about the way I was hoping for my kids to develop their level of learning and things like that was more about group. I also think in light of, and this is sort of observational in light of COVID, I think there's something to be mindful of the fact that a lot of kids, maybe less very young kids right now, but kids who are a little older, who have spent a significant amount of time with around fewer children, having an opportunity to practice these social experiences is a little bit more important. We're seeing a little bit of a slower social skill development and higher social anxiety and stuff in my practice among the 3 to 8 year olds right now. Because I think in part because of COVID, and that's anecdotal. I'm sure there's lots of budding studies on this, but not a lot have come out yet because we're still kind of figuring out how to make sense of everything. But those are things to think about. And really, I think it's about the fit and the sense of security that you have and confidence that you have as a parent.
Yep, that makes sense. And then we did have a question in the chat that kind of relates to this, because you mentioned development a little bit in terms of a group care setting. Do you feel that the social/development pros of a group childcare situation or out-of-home situation outweigh sort of like the convenience factor of in-home? Obviously, it's personal for each family, but do you feel like that really accelerates development?
I don't know that it accelerates development, and it's not always, it depends on the child too. Like this is another piece. You have to think about, like, where is my child at? What's my child's temperament? Where is my child at developmentally? Are they slower to warm up? And that doesn't necessarily mean don't do group care, because, we also want to like provide scaffolding to stretch them. I always say, like, bend, don't break, right? Give them a little bit of a step past their comfort zone in a really emotionally supportive way. We don't want to avoid things that's just because kids feel anxious about them. But at the same time, some kids are, comparing your child to your child, not to other kids, have a slower trajectory of their developmental growth. And they're still like on track, but they just need a little bit more of a slower environment. They need need more attention to get their needs met. Those are things to consider. But I think you can have lots of socialization if you have a nanny. You just need to be creative about that and communicate that expectation and help facilitate that process with your nanny. Lots of nannies have play dates and groups that they take kids to. You can have group care that doesn't have attunement to your child's social emotional development. So you've got to, it's really about, again, it's the what, or it's the how, not the what. How is it done? How is it prioritized? How is it understood? These are all questions you want to be asking both your nanny or your group care provider. Like, that's, I think, so much more important than whether you do one or the other.
Yep. And I think Alex touched on that before when, you had an instinct or a feeling about Turner and sort of his, happiness at this first daycare center that you went to. And I think it's so important that we follow those instincts and don't kind of ignore them.
I especially think as a first-time mom, I was trying really hard to not be the alarmist that was like, this isn't the right thing, because I really I knew I wanted to work, but I didn't want to bring him to daycare. And, we're still in this environment. We live in New York City in an apartment. There's not room here for my husband and I to be working from home and a nanny. And so logistically, it wasn't an option for us either. And I left it a little bit longer than I probably should have, because I was trying so hard to be like the cool first time mom that was like, he's fine, he's going to grow into it. And I should have just listened to my gut that was saying, like, your kid and he doesn't seem happy here.
Yeah. Sarah, your kids are a little bit older, but going back to when you were having your first, any advice that you would have given yourself in terms of your search for childcare or, early mistakes that you feel like you made or anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think, well, I think one of the things that I am happy that I did was, I like really researched and like, I mean, I had a bit of an edge because I knew the questions that I was looking for answering. Like, and I think, Alex, what you bring up is so incredibly common. And even I, as a mom, have been in a situation where I'm like, I don't want to be the alarmist. I don't want to be the one that's always asking all these questions and being like, but did you, and are you, and will that? And I had a teacher my son's teacher this last year. I was like, I had this feeling that he needed to be moved to a different camp group. And I didn't bring it up and didn't bring it up and didn't bring it up. And then the very last week before camp started, something had occurred. And I was like, no, I need to say something. Can we switch it at the last minute? And they were so supportive. And the teacher said something to me too, because she knew my son from the school year. And then she's also works at the camp. And she was like, never be afraid to advocate for your kid. If you think that something doesn't feel good to you, be a squeaky wheel, speak up, be the annoying mom. Because one, you're not annoying. And actually childcare centers and camps and hopefully nannies are also want you to help them know your kid and know what your kid needs, because their intention is to support your child's development and they don't always know what's best. You do. And so I think knowing that like nobody knows your kid better than you, and you do need to be able to withstand that uncomfortable feeling that comes from like confrontation or being loud, or being like, by loud I mean like the squeaky wheel loud, like you can be calm and regulated about the delivery but like don't be afraid to advocate for your kid.
Yeah, that's so important. Both of you have experiences with group childcare situations. What are some really good questions to ask when you're touring a place and you're meeting the educators for the first time and considering a daycare center? What are some of the top questions that you would ask?
Yeah, I think something that I didn't ask was like what a realistic expectation was on communication initially. And that's why when I started talking to Vivvi and they are using an application called Brightwheel, and it allows them to update in real time, like when he's napping, when he woke up, what he ate, they'll post pictures there. And it's like a feed that we can watch all day and we get notifications for. So understanding like what the communication with his teachers looks like, how many teachers to students, but then if there are additional floaters, like there's this, I think like it's a pretty standard ratio of like 4 babies to 1 teacher. That's right?
Yeah.
But at Vivvi, like I go in the room and there are all these teacher, I don't like the word floaters, but they're not assigned to a room and they're working across rooms. And so understanding what the coverage looks like, because I do like that he plays by himself, but like, you want them to also be loved and get some individual attention. And then another question that I would ask is sort of like, what is the, not necessarily even curriculum, because that wasn't something that was the highest on my priority list at the time being that young, but like, what are they doing for development? So, at Vivvi, at his school, they have a monthly theme. Last month, it was like, I'm from New York City. And like, all they did was like, they painted with apples, they made bagels, they had pizza, they did all these things, and they're reading New York City themed books. And it's just like, at the end of the month, you sort of get a report on all of the things that they did. And then with the upcoming month, like what you can expect from that. And that just exceeded all of my expectations, because again, I didn't really know what to ask. And now the bar is kind of set at a level for me where communication is number one, and like a genuine understanding of like how they give attention and affection to kids. Like the rocking chair behind you, for example, where if some kids and their infants have a hard time falling asleep, there are people rocking babies to help them fall asleep instead of just like being overwhelmed and putting a baby in a crib and hoping they fall asleep. So that sort of attention to care is something that I would have focused on asking more questions around.
And Sarah, what about you? Both that you would sort of advise your patients, but also as a mom yourself and somebody who's experienced group childcare.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I always ask is like, how do you support their emotional development? How do you help them feel safe? How do you prioritize that? Because I mean, I love good curriculum, and I think I'm always curious about like how, is it child directed play, and all that stuff is important. But at the end of the day, like a child is not going, like I was saying earlier, like you can't explore your environment, you can't take risks, you can't be curious and learn new things if you don't feel like you are seen, like you feel safe, that you are able to be soothed by the people taking care of you. And so that's what I tend to focus on. Like when you've got multiple children in a room who are having a really hard time, what's the plan? How do you guys have a strategy for addressing the emotional needs of children when their needs are like unpredictable, and, like being able to kind of be curious, not in a, sort of a judgmental way or critical way, but just to be curious about how they handle tough situations, how they handle discipline. Is it developmentally appropriate? Things like that.
Yep. That's really helpful. Okay, we have gotten a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand. So it's flu season, cold season, just entering that whole fun time of the year. We have one question that says, I'm expecting my kiddo to be getting sick constantly at daycare. How do I manage having to take days off from work versus having a sitter on standby for when my baby spikes a fever if I don't have any family near me to help out?
From my experience,
any experience? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any family that lives nearby either. So that sentiment is, I feel that. I think that especially when they first start and they're so little, they're going to get like a runny nose, and honestly, like a runny nose, everybody's got a runny nose at school. So I think if they're like spiking a fever and they're like clearly unwell and they need to stay home for like the safety of all the other kids at school, we've found a balance of, instead of taking a whole day off work, I potentially like work from home that day. And I'm in a position where I can notify my work that, I'm working from home, and they might hear like a baby next to me. But I think I don't have the flexibility either to find someone on the spot that day. So it's not as common now that we're a couple of months in, but definitely at the beginning, it was like a day here, a day there. And you're thinking like, oh my gosh, and again, but I do think it's manageable if you have the flexibility. I don't know the situation if you can work from home, and like finding things for them to do. Like at 4 months old, those standing play gyms from Skip Hop, I just used to like tie toys to it and literally put him next to me, and I would work while he did that. And that was sort of like, I sort of gave myself a mom pass that day, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to be worried about like tummy time and like stimulating you like you do at school, but like, I'm going to be like a mid-grade mom and like a mid-grade worker that day. And like, everybody just sort of has to be okay with that, because that's my best advice.
I'm kind of not good at anything today, but we're surviving.
Yeah. We're going to get through it. And if you drink wine, there's like a bottle of wine at the end of the tunnel for you, or like a face mask, and go to bed early or something like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking about, you touched upon like flexibility in the workplace. Sarah, how do you feel that that's changed in light of pandemic? Are moms and dads able to be a little bit more transparent about some of their childcare needs at home, or is it something that's still giving them extreme anxiety to sort of keep this separation of their family life to their work life?
I mean, I think it's shifted. I think workplaces hopefully are understanding that if they don't support parents and realize that the world that we live in has systemically not been very supportive of parents, which this pandemic absolutely put into extreme relief, like really put the spotlight on how much parents are not supported by the ways that workplaces have historically treated them. And I think hopefully good workplace environments are getting the message that that parents need to be able to have flexible working environments and have responsiveness to their needs, that sometimes they're going to need to work from home because they have a sick child, or they're going to have children on Zoom calls. And sometimes they're just going to have to not show up because they need to take care of their kids, because childcare is hard to come by. It is not reliable anymore in the way that it used to be. I mean, when I kids first went to daycare, like, you would go all the way up till that very last inch of that 100.4 fever. Like, kids were going to school sick. Everyone used to go to work sick. I think pre-COVID, this expectation was, unless you're like puking, you better be here. And so parents would send their kids to daycare sick, and parents will go to work sick. And now that's just not an acceptable thing anymore, I think, in a very good way. But then we also have to adapt, because you are going to be, your kid's not able to go to daycare if they're even a little bit sick. And so, yeah, I mean, we could get on a soapbox. We could have a whole nother workshop about systemic issues around supporting parents in the workplace. But I think people are hopefully catching up. And if they're not, like, talk to your manager, talk to your employer, talk to HR, figure out ways, speak up. Again, be that squeaky wheel. This is how change happens, is we have to make our voices heard, that like, we as parents need these supports in place.
And maybe ask the HR team if they subsidize childcare. If you're pregnant right now, or, you know, wondering how your benefits might change. I've noticed a lot of companies will subsidize, you know, fertility benefits and egg freezing. And then once you have the child, that drops off radically. So yes, be change. One question we got in the chat is that somebody is looking to start using a nanny at 4 months when they go back to work. Is there an age that they should keep in mind that's sort of an optimal age to transition from one-on-one care to a group childcare setting? And this one might be good for you, Sarah.
I would say, again, you got to know your kid. You got to know what works for you. If you start working with a nanny at 4 months, and that child forms a really strong bond with that nanny, and that works for you guys, that's fantastic. And there's no need to change that unless you want to. That said, I would say, you know, we look at child development, we look at parallel play is happening a lot around, you know, the 1 to 2 year old mark. And then around 3 years, you might start to see more interactive play, more imaginative play. And those are times when it's helpful to have opportunities to experiment with those, you know, systems that are coming online. So it doesn't mean you need to do group care necessarily by the time your kid hits 2, but you want to be introducing social opportunities for them to negotiate, to have to, you know, delay gratification. Someone's playing with something and I really want it and I can't have it. Oh, that's hard, right? Like, that I think it's important, at least by around age 2, to have some level of socialization on a very regular basis. Doesn't have to be group care. It could be a music and me class, or a place group, or like nannies that just get together at the park on a regular basis. But I would be mindful of the fact that, you know, the interests of a child and the way that their relationships are beginning to, their relationship to play and their relationship to peers is beginning to shift. That's going to inform some of what we want to open their world up a little bit as they get older.
And I can speak to this one a little bit as well. I hired our nanny, who's amazing. Her name is Sade, at 3 months, went back to work around 3.5 months. And then I remember, and it was great, so convenient. You know, she comes to our house every morning. She's there all day. She helps us out with Aster's meal prep and laundry, and it's wonderful. And then around 6 months, I was like, I don't think Aster's ever met another baby. We don't have family close by either. And I've noticed that she's just very social with people when we're walking down the street. So my nanny has formed this awesome play group for us now. She's 12 months. But I did decide that she's going to start going to Vivvi's Dumbo location. One of the great benefits that we offer for our Vivvi employees is we pay for their, you know, if they want to send their kids to a Vivvi. So she'll be going 2 days a week after my second is born in December. She's going to start going in January, partially to get her out of the house so I can have that one-on-one time with newborn, but also because right around age 1 is always when I imagined starting to send her to sort of a group situation. That makes sense. Last question I will go with. We are interested in exploring part-time daycare. So I assume that means either a half day or a couple days a week. Are there any different questions that they should be asking than those needing full-time care? Any you can think of? Alex, I don't know if you went like right into 5 days in the beginning.
Yeah, we went straight to 5 days. I would love a combo, a world where I worked 4 days and he went 4 days and we got an extra day together, but not yet.
Maybe sometime in the future if we keep asking our HR teams about all of these family-based
or work
questions.
3 days. He goes to Vivvi 4 days and then we get an extra
and you
day.
get a
So that's the ideal
Oh.
scenario.
That is the dream. Okay, so thank you everyone so much for joining us. We're going to be sending out a follow-up email sometime in the next 48 hours with some exclusive perks from Hatch, as well as a recording if you did. Also to all those who registered who might not be on this live line, glad to have you rewatching the event, and just want to thank everybody. You're doing great if you're pregnant, if you have a newborn, everyone's doing amazing. And thanks so much for taking the time out to be here today. It's really hard to attend these webinars sometimes live, and you did that. So congratulations, and we hope it was really, really helpful. And if you have any questions, I'll drop my email in the chat. It's just steele@vivvi.com. Thank you so much, Sarah and Alex. You've been absolutely lovely to chat with tonight, and have a great evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.